Morning, everybody. Happy rage-filled Monday, and welcome to the News Agenda with me, Fleet Street Fox. And today I'm joined by the Mirror's Deputy Political Editor, Ben Glaze, who's back off holiday and is not filled with rage like I am. Morning, Ben.
Morning. Just for the record, it wasn't a holiday. I had a loo day on Friday and then I had a normal weekend off. I haven't actually been on holiday, but okay.
Sorry. You get an out-of-office email response in the summer, you assume someone's away, but you still had a loo day on Friday. Anyway, this is the People's Pay-Per-View, so get into the comments, ask us your questions. Those of you listening later on podcasts are just going to have to wait for the public inquiry to tell you what you already know. So what have we got for you today? Well, the Mirror has splashed on the fact that police are now looking into the video that we published a few days ago, which features Tory HQ workers twirling, drinking and dancing at a Christmas bash in 2020. Now, more on that later. But first, I want to discuss one of the many things that's filling me with fury today. And it's on good old page 29. Page 30 wouldn't exist without it. Where I've got a story in the paper, Ben. Now, this is about the nuclear test medal, which the Mirror helped campaign for over 4 years. We went to see Boris Johnson a year ago, last June. I mean, that's how recently he was actually in charge of things. So we went to see him, and within a month of him taking office, Rishi Sunak then announced the medal had been granted by the King last November. Now, Ben, they were told they would get this medal by late summer. So just take a guess. When do you think they are now being told they're going to get it?
Yeah, I mean, there's always a debate, isn't there, when government refers to seasons. I remember an autumn statement that took place in very early December, which for anyone's book is winter. But I would imagine normal people think late summer, mid-August, but it's probably not going to be mid-August, is it?
No. In fact, they haven't got a date.
No.
So they were told what happened is the government people we spoke to have been told, well, they've waited 70 years already. You know, it's not so bad. Let me tell you, everybody, about the story of Don Baker. Now, Don was in HMS Scarborough in 1958. He was 21 years old. He was in the engine room of a ship that was being used for meteorological studies at the nuclear weapons tests at Christmas Island in the South Pacific. He was forced to watch several H-bombs as part of Operation Grapple on Christmas Island. He was 21 at the time. By the time he was 25, he had stomach ulcers. They plagued him throughout his life. He had to force to leave the Navy as a result of it. He had a full stomach bypass when he was 40. That's him 21 in training at HMS Fisgard. Now, rectal cancer finally killed him when he was 85 years old. Now, that is a little bit above the average life expectancy, but you've got to bear in mind he's had a lifetime of ill health, and that is Don's coffin at his funeral in Lincoln Crematorium 4 months after Rishi Sunak had announced the medal, because it took them 5 months to bother to accept the application forms for that medal, because they didn't do what we asked them to do, which was to open applications early and then, worry about the paperwork afterwards. They did the other way around, as per. That it does matter, Ben, when people these nuclear veterans, they've got an average age of 85, right? They've had lifetimes of ill health in some cases. In other cases, they've just had the worry and the stress of ill health. But they're waiting for something that takes more than a few months. So they were told late summer to start with. They're now being told it won't be in production until late summer, which could be, October, couldn't it, really?
Yeah,
which means they might not get it for Remembrance Day.
I think the government bureaucracy and the protocol and the red tape and everything that, those of us who work in Westminster, we have to deal with every day and just sort of become slightly inured to it, to be honest. But when you see it affecting things like this, where every day matters, because, like you say, these let's not be a bit bad, these are old and in many circumstances quite ill people. They haven't got long left, a lot of them. So each day that they don't receive that medal is a day that it might be their last. We just don't know. So when the government's sort of stalling on things like this, and we do understand there are proper processes, they have to do it, but really when they read a story like you've done today, they just need to get on with it. You need to sort of rip up the bureaucracy, the red tape, and just look at the humanity of it, I think, and just get on with it, awarding these people for their service.
And what do you think, everybody? I mean, it's kind of a stupid question, I suppose. Everyone thinks these guys should get a medal and it should be hurried up. But I mean, do you understand why perhaps do you think within a year is acceptable? What do you think about it maybe missing Remembrance Sunday? Because that's the big fear of the veterans at the moment, is they won't have it in time for their march past the cenotaph. Now, Marco says they can bestow gongs on the lawbreakers in no time. So for those veterans who are still suffering, they're at the back of the queue. Now, it's true, Marco, in the space of the time since we've had the medal announcement, we've also had a new monarch. And yesterday, he was handing out his coronation medal to people at Trooping the Colour, which was marvellous for him. But I do suspect maybe that Trooping the Colour medal, the coronation medal, went ahead of the veterans in the queue. I think it probably leapfrogged the test veterans a bit. Likewise, whatever the Cabinet Office has been doing for them as far as the medal is concerned within sort of the operation of government, I think has perhaps been leapfrogged a little bit by the problems the Cabinet Office has had with WhatsApps and the honours list of Boris Johnson. We haven't even got to the honours list yet of Liz Truss, which how much is that's going to suck power out of government, Ben. But the thing is, we've had 1,500 medal applications. I thought it would be mostly from families, but it turns out 1,000 of them are from the veterans themselves. There's still 1,000 of them. It's really important to them. There's 1,000 people who have asked for their medal and they want it. And it really shouldn't be something that takes any longer to do. So possibly it's all got gunged up by what we've had going on elsewhere in government, but it's not acceptable. Deborah says it's disgusting. If it was something for them, it would be done. They probably think if they wait long enough, there won't be any to bestow. There is, I mean, Ben, let's be practical about this for a moment. There is a political gain as well as the moral gain and the newspaper headline gain of awarding a medal to these guys. Rishi Sunak got that headline when he mentioned the medal award. But of course, if there's fewer and fewer of them alive by the time the medal actually comes out, or they miss Remembrance Day, and the Mirror keeps on reporting, oh, look, someone else has passed away. Someone else has passed away. Because Morag, Don's daughter, said he was a very proud Navy man. He was delighted to hear he was going to get this medal. And now we're having to help his widow, his wife, do it. If they don't do it quick enough, they're not going to get whatever gain they wanted out of it, are they? They're not going to get that recognition to the veterans, if that's the important thing. They won't have the moral high ground. They won't have the political benefit of it. They won't have the headline benefit of it. It will look shameful somehow.
Yeah, I mean, they do need to get on with it. And I'm not sure that the government's necessarily doing it for good publicity. If you know, with the Mirror, we're going to have a go at Conservative government anyway. But we are even-handed in so much as when they are doing the right thing, we acknowledge that and we praise them for that. And this is the right thing to do. Now, the government, you've got a good headline out saying they would do it, and they'll get great headlines the first time that one of these medals is actually pinned on a veteran's chest on their jacket. But when you say you're going to do something, the problem is people expect it to be done. You can't just kick it into the long grass. And like I said earlier about the protocols, the processes, the bureaucracy that has to be waded through. The government does need to hurry things up, because in a very practical level, the longer they wait, the fewer veterans there will be to award them to.
Exactly. And all the wonderful, what they got out of it. And Rishi Sunak there is talking to a guy called Malcolm Smith, who's one of the test veterans. He's wearing on his chest there the yellow and black, what they call the missing medal. Right, so it's an empty medal ribbon, and they wore it as part of their protests when they were campaigning for the medal. Last year at the Cenotaph, they marched wearing that yellow and black missing medal because they didn't have the real one. What they want to do this year, there are 50 places at the Cenotaph. It's an unprecedentedly large number for the test veterans to have, and it's because they've got the medal. So they need to have that gong before they get there. And to be frank, you can't give it to them the week before and expect all these people who are a bit ill and a bit old to come from all over the country to London, get a medal, go back home and then come back again. It's not going to work. You've got to have a bit of time for them to have a rest in between, for them to come back for that medal. And of course, we do want it to come from the King. And he knows how to hand out medals now, because we saw him do it yesterday. So if you're watching, Your Majesty, sign off on the design, please, and hurry it up and tell government to extract digit from bumhole. Because people like Don are dying without the medal that they absolutely and totally deserve. And I'm going to keep writing about it if they do. Eddie says, the only people who've benefited from this are the solicitors. It's too late for my husband. You're quite right. It is too late, unfortunately. But the solicitors who actually worked on the case for the test veterans lost a lot of money. They lost millions fighting that because of the way the MOD handled it, which is why they can't find any other legal firms to step up and to act for them now, even though we've got some evidence about blood tests being taken and withheld from them illegally. Anyway, thank you for that, Ben. Now we need to move on, I suppose, to the main story of the day. And if this doesn't get you cross as well, then I don't know what will. So, video of Tory staffers dancing madly at a Christmas bash. I mean, could it look any more Tory? Christmas braces and an appalling jumper. And someone who's wearing a Labour dress for some reason. This happened at CCHQ, Christmas 2020, which, if anyone can remember, that's the Christmas that we had cancelled. Right, that's the Christmas that Boris Johnson said, I don't want to cancel Christmas, and then had to. It's the Christmas after which he wanted to reopen schools on like the 4th of January and then had to shut them again on the 5th because it was a bad idea. That's the Christmas in which these people were dancing like that. Now, it says in the paper today, Ben, that that the police are looking into this. So what's going to happen as a result, do we think?
Right. Now, this party, it's been reported before, and there's been still images from it before, photographs, published about 18 months ago when the Mirror first started reporting on what had gone on with lockdown busting parties in Number 10 in Whitehall and in parts of the Conservative Party. But this is the first time that video has emerged, moving footage. Now, when police originally looked at the stills, they said there wasn't enough evidence, and when they spoke to people, there wasn't enough evidence to fine anyone for their attendance at this party. Now the video has emerged. Well, obviously that puts a different light on it. I mean, the two people involved with the dancing, that's Malin Bogue and Jack Smith. Now, Malin Bogue, she worked on Boris Johnson's 2019 leadership campaign, and Jack Smith, he now works for the Energy Minister, Graham Stewart. But this was part of Sean Bailey, who is the Tory candidate at the time to become London Mayor. This was his campaign team. So they're both seconded to it. You can see they're becoming quite energetic in their dancing, almost knocking the wine glasses. Well, I did knock wine glasses over there. This video, obviously, is being seen by an awful lot of people now, including the Metropolitan Police. So they said yesterday that, they're aware of the video and they're examining it. Now, they haven't said they'll formally investigate yet, but the way this works is they'll look at the video, see does that constitute new evidence? Well, obviously it does because they didn't have it before. And then they'll decide whether or not to formally launch an investigation. Now, you have to think that looking at that, they would, because if you're not supposed to be within 2 meters of people under guidance, and of course social distancing rules were in place, they're literally holding hands as they're dancing and twirling each other.
Underneath a sign that says "keep 2 meters distance" is on that pillar behind them. It's really clear.
That's one aspect to this row, and obviously, the COVID inquiry is just starting its second day. David Cameron's up giving evidence at the COVID inquiry to Baroness Heather Hallett and her team. So that reopens it. Of course, we've got the Privileges Committee report is in Parliament today. That's the one that said Boris Johnson is a liar who lied and lied and lied again. So MPs are possibly going to vote on that. It's more likely there'll be no opposition to it and it'll just go through on the nod. But it keeps this whole narrative of Partygate in the public consciousness more than 18 months after it was first revealed. And it keeps, Rishi Sunak is desperate to move on from this. Let's not forget he was fined himself for attending Boris Johnson's birthday party 3 years ago today. Happy birthday, former Prime Minister. The other thing to bear in mind with this video is it was Sean Bailey's campaign, right? Now, he, in Boris Johnson's resignation on his list, has just been made a peer. He's off to the House of Lords. Now, he left the party before these two started dancing and before the video was shot. But he still, it was his party for his team, right? And he's apologised and said it shouldn't have happened, etc., etc. And he wasn't there when this particular video was shot. But there are calls now for him to either relinquish his peerage or for Rishi Sunak to stop it. Constitutionally, I don't think he can stop it now. It's too late. But of course, Sean Bailey could look at that and think, that was my team. How did I lead them by example if they thought this was okay? So he is under pressure to stand down from the House of Lords. Another chap who is at the party to start with got an OBE in Boris Johnson's resignation on his list. That's a chap called Ben Mallet. So neither of those two are involved in this dancing, but people who were there at that party, that now looks even worse, now we've got a hold of this video, they were honoured in Boris Johnson's resignation honours list, and predictably Labour and the Lib Dems are saying that they should give up those honours, or that Rishi Sunak should intervene and strip them of them. I don't think Rishi Sunak will intervene and strip them of those honours. It's entirely possible that Sean Bailey and Ben Mallet might look at that video and think, is this a great look? Maybe I should do the decent thing and give up the gong.
Maybe, because he's the one in the red braces, Ben Mallet, and that you can see in the video, and he's very close to other people that he's talking and drinking with, and it's quite plainly he's breaking the 2 meter rule as well. So one would have thought that the police are, as you say, watching the video in the same way that everyone else is, and unlike everybody else, don't know yet whether or not it shows something's gone wrong. But the original investigation into that video, like you say, was closed for a lack of evidence. Now we've got the evidence, and it should be pointed out, if the Mirror can find the evidence, then the blasted Metropolitan Police should have been able to look through people's phones and find something. You would have thought they've actually got the power to do that. We do not. We have to wait for them to give it to us. Lazy says, will episode 2 be Boris leading the conga? Oh, God, no, I hope not. Now, those two dancers, as you said, Ben, have been ID'd. They've given no comment. Sean Bailey resigned on the spot when that news about that party first broke. But OBE for Jack Smith, who works for a minister, who's maybe going to find that job a little bit more difficult from now on. But one of the things that sort of happened around all this time was there's been one instance, as far as I can tell, of Labour being accused of partying during the restrictions, which was Keir Starmer's beer and curry issue with Angela Rayner, which the police looked into and said was fine. It was a work event because it was between campaigning. But we've had Bernard Jenkin from the Parliamentary Standards Committee. Apparently his wife was inviting people to birthday drinks and he went along. We've had this party. We've got an entire spreadsheet full of stuff that the Tories, Boris Johnson and Carrie, got up to in Downing Street and at Chequers, and various Tory staffers, people inside Downing Street doing these things. In your view, Ben, am I making a leap to say that there is something about Tory ideology which says the rules are not for us? Or is it current people in power that seem to think that? Or is that just people in power in general? Is it not about a party? Because it seems to be it's the Conservatives that have most of these allegations about them. And there's got to be some reason for that, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, the problem, it's one of those like Donald Rumsfeld known unknowns. We don't know what others were getting up to, because it just might not have come out yet and probably won't. I'm not saying they were getting up to anything, but what we have reported on, and the Mirror sort of led the way on this, of course, it has focused on the Conservatives, and that is, the extent of breaking rules and the not following their own guidance they issued. And of course, the reason it's certainly more pertinent that it's the Conservatives, but they were the ones who imposed these rules, guidance on the rest of us, off and on for 18 months, I think it was in the end. Because they were setting the rules, and the vast majority of us are abiding by them, well, it's beholden on them to set an example and to abide by them themselves. And then each picture that comes out, now video, just shows that they weren't doing that. And in that piece that's in the paper today, the extraordinary public anger, and particularly from the families of victims who saw their loved ones die from coronavirus, were following rules, in many cases often couldn't go and visit them, or when funerals happened, there was a limited attendance at a funeral. You had to sit on your own at a funeral, no more than 30 people, etc., etc. And then this video comes out and you see two young people working for the Conservative Party mayoral candidate's campaign dancing away as if it's just a normal Christmas party. And of course, they were, we didn't have Christmas parties, most of us that year. It was, banned it was literally banned. We didn't have them until months later. The huge public anger is focused on the Conservative Party for this, because it's come out that they were the ones who did break the rules.
And what do you think, everybody? Have you got a problem with this video, or do you think it's fair enough? Because, I mean, these weren't the people in Downing Street really making the rules. They happen to be working for the Conservative Party, and they're in a basement at CCHQ. They've probably been working together all week, and so they thought they weren't increasing any infection risk, maybe, to party together. But I don't know, Ben, why people who are running a campaign like this need to all be there. Everyone else at this time was Zooming. Children were Zooming from home to do schools, to do their lessons. So, I mean, why did, the head of a social media campaign and the head of something else and the policy, blah, blah, have to be in the same room? These are all white collar jobs. You could do all of this, as we all were, from our back bedrooms, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely you can. you could meet up for work purposes unless you could work from home, right? Now, the vast majority of us doing desk jobs, essentially, were working from home. And sometimes that was difficult because having a face-to-face conversation with a colleague would have been a lot easier than dealing with Zoom that was going down and internet freezing and all the rest of it. Sometimes dodgy mobile phone signals, and it was damn frustrating sometimes. And it would have been a lot easier to be in the office and have those conversations. But you made it work. You know, that was what we were all doing because that was what we were told to do. So then to find out that some people weren't even just working from home, but when they were meeting up for those essential work meetings, they were then getting smashed and dancing the night away. It's quite annoying, isn't it?
It is rather. Now, what do you think, everybody? Do you think that this is just a uniquely Tory issue? Do you think that there is some correlation between being conservative with a capital C and being a member of the party, conservative enough to be a member of the party, and breaking these rules? Am I just drawing too much of a line here? Because, you know, I don't think that historically Tory ideology says we don't need to care about other people or think about others or be considerate. I do think, though, perhaps that the current people in government, regardless of party, to be honest, not a political point, but the people who are currently running the government seem to be of a clique of people who from the top down, Ben, from Boris Johnson downwards, never seem to think that the rules really applied. And if you've got that person at the top and they recruit people underneath them who support them and so on and so forth down the ladder, eventually you get junior staffers who aren't being told or aren't having it shown to them that considering other people and self-sacrifice and following the rules is something they ought to be doing. Well, that's the problem, isn't it?
Boris Johnson's always thought that the rules that apply to normal people don't apply to him. There's some anecdote about, there's not an anecdote, it was a school report when he was at Eton. One of his schoolmasters in his end of term report said he genuinely thinks the rules that apply to everyone else don't apply to him. And that was when Boris was like 12 or 13. So when you think back to that 45, 46 years ago, and he's carried on living his life like that, when he then gets into Downing Street and, you know, he's the prime minister, he sets the tone, he sets the example. If everyone, you know, essentially have to run riot, number 10, because he lets them get away with it, because he's not serious, he doesn't have formal strictures and proprieties, then people do think they can, the night before Prince Philip's funeral, get drunk and play on a swing in the garden. That's the sort of thing that happens. I should say, you certainly don't get that impression now from Rishi Sunak's number 10 operation. So yes, he was fined walking into the cabinet room 3 years ago today, Boris Johnson's birthday, and accepting a glass of squash or whatever it was, because he doesn't drink, remember. So he was fined the same number of times as Boris Johnson. Many people around Rishi Sunak feel that's deeply unfair. That's not for me to say whether it's fair or not. What I would say is it's a more professional operation now. You can't imagine that if Rishi Sunak was in charge during coronavirus, those parties would have happened. You certainly can't imagine if Theresa May was in charge during coronavirus, those parties would have happened. You know, Number 10 was one of the most unhappiest places in the country at the time under Theresa's rule.
You think they were just drinking quietly under their desks on their own and weeping? They weren't. They weren't actually partying. Yeah, that's one point. It's not a conservative ideological thing that other people don't matter. Gordon Brown, likewise, it wouldn't have happened, I dare say, under him if he'd been in charge. It just seems to be something which is unique to the current people, or the people we have had at the top of that tree. I mean, Lady Ashley on Twitter says they should all be given prison sentences. Dee says it boils down to if they did wrong, there should be consequences. It's not like they're young kids misbehaving. They knew what they were doing. There was a sign on the wall over their head, Dee. I mean, it's not difficult. Everyone in the country knew. This kind of time, everyone else was walking. If you had to go in public, you're walking around with your hands in your pockets and trying not to cough, and you're masked up and everything. This is 2020. This is the first year of the whole thing. It hadn't even been a year by that point. Matt says, I have an issue with the Met Police. I find it difficult to believe they didn't know this was going on and they couldn't get hold of the video evidence. This is why trust in the police is so low. They could have got hold of that video evidence because it's plainly from someone who was at the party, isn't it, Ben? It's plainly someone at the party has had it, has kept it for 3 years and has now provided it to the Mirror. So...
yeah, I don't actually know where that video's come from. It's not my story.
But it's obviously someone who was filming it.
Someone who there has filmed it originally. We don't know if they're the ones. Well, I don't know if they're the ones.
It's been passed around, maybe, but it's found its way to the Mirror. So someone who was at that party had this video, And the police interviewed everyone at that party, or tried to. So they should have said, have you got a video of it? Have you got any evidence that we can have? And either someone lied to the police at the time, or they just didn't ask the question. They didn't.
It does seem, thinking back to the original police investigation, such as it was, it did appear there was a reluctance to get involved initially. And it was only when more and more evidence by us and by other media outlets was brought to light that eventually the Met Police did get involved. And you got the impression, certainly looking from the outside, that they just wanted it to go away as quickly, as soon as possible. Should bear in mind as well, of course, that in part of the preparations for the COVID inquiry, Boris Johnson handed over diaries, journals, and some messages, WhatsApp messages, to the Cabinet Office, to their lawyers who are preparing the government's case for the COVID inquiry. And they found, I think, 16 instances that they've reported to both the Met Police and Thames Valley Police. Thames Valley Police, of course, covering Chequers, the Prime Minister's country retreat in Buckinghamshire. 16 incidents that they think might merit police investigation over other parties that hadn't been investigated before. So that's very much a watch this space.
Yeah, and they described those 16 incidents as, quote, problematic. The Cabinet Office calling it problematic, well, Minister. It's the sticky wicket and no mistake. So we'll have to see perhaps how some of that pans out. But it's worth, like you said, Ben, the police only seem to have investigated any of this because they've been embarrassed into doing so. It's so much the same reason perhaps that the nuclear veterans got their medal. It's because the government was embarrassed into doing it. That seems to be the only way we get these people to do stuff. Now, Dee, hello, Dee, you're back again. The pub owners who had lock-in parties had fines, so why not these people having fines? I'm sure with the amount of police standing outside and security, they knew what was going on. I think, wasn't there something at the time, actually? No, this was, I can remember now, that the party at CCHQ was one where there were some doors damaged, and it actually went to the top of it got reported to the top of the party at the time, as I recall. And a couple of people got disciplined, I think, over it. And security did know about it at the time, Dee. So I think you're right. And there's obviously plenty of meat on the bones, put it that way. So we'll have to wait and see what Old Plod does, won't we? Now, thank you, everyone, for taking part in that. Thank you, Ben. Now, we do have some good news. We've managed to find it for you. And hopefully this will diffuse some of your rage. Here it is. Now, Martin Ward weighed 15 stone. He had suffered 2 collapsed lungs and had a cancer scare. So he did what any overweight man in his 50s would and started running marathons. Now, at the age of 64, he has finally completed his 100th marathon, including 9 33-mile ultra marathons. I mean, the man must be deranged, if you ask me, but he's done amazingly to do with that. Ben, is this proof that for those of us who haven't run a single marathon, not even I haven't run a quarter marathon, I haven't run, actually, since I was at school. Does this mean that we can just get round to it later and it'll be fine?
I'm one of those people who thinks running is only if you're being chased. Like, stories like this make me feel so bad because I don't do any exercise. And I certainly couldn't envisage running a marathon, let alone 100 of them. You know, this chap's 64 years old now, started running 8 years ago when he got to 15 stone, had various heart problems, and yeah, it's great feet. Great feet.
He's got great feet.
Yeah,
You might say there's only any point running if you're being chased by a bear or something, Ben. Yeah. But you see, if there was a bear and it was you and Martin, the bear's going to get you, isn't he? Because Martin's faster than you are.
Depends. I mean, obviously he is.
For longer.
But if I was close enough to him at the start and tripped him up, then the bear would get him, wouldn't he?
There you go. That's the journalist's reasoning for not taking exercise, that I can outthink this. It'll be fine. Okay, right. Okay, we'll see how that works out over the next 40 or 50 years, shall we, Ben? Come back and let us know next time a bear gets released. Right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Ben, for taking us through all that. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to the government for the nuclear test medal, but hurry it up. Thank you for the COVID inquiry, but I think you have to hurry that one up as well. And come on, the Met Police. We can all see what they've done wrong. You need to start issuing some fines and do it quickly, please. There's no reason for delay. Right. Thank you, everyone. You can carry on about your day now. If you're listening on podcast, please leave us a review so other people can find us. And we will see you again on Wednesday for another edition of the News Agenda Explained. Until then, tatty bye.